Welcome to the Disability News Report. I'm your host, Jennifer Price. The move towards driverless cars isn't just a chance for people to relax at the wheel. It's really an opportunity to revolutionize personal transportation in a way that offers life-changing benefits to people with disabilities. What is often left out of discussions around autonomous vehicles are the real benefits that they will offer to people with disabilities. That's a major consideration given that 57 million Americans are classified as disabled, including 3.8 million veterans. Studies have shown that autonomous vehicles will allow about 2 million people with disabilities to even enter the workforce. And they also found that self-driving cars could have a huge effect on the healthcare economy. According to the study's data, people with disabilities miss roughly 11.2 million medical appointments each year simply because they lack access to transportation. So making transportation more accessible is a key to enabling people to improve their quality of life, whether that improvement is through better economic opportunities, less social isolation, or restoring dignity. My guest is Dr. Rory Cooper, the founding director and VA Senior Research Career Scientist of the Human Engineering Research Laboratories. Dr. Cooper has authored or co-authored over 300 peer-reviewed journal publications and has 20 patents awarded or pending. He is also the lead researcher and director of a study conducted by the University of Pittsburgh looking into how autonomous vehicles can better serve people with disabilities. That interview is coming up next. All right, so hi, Dr. Cooper. Welcome to the show. I appreciate you being on.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get my camp. There we go. That's
right. Sure.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I am fascinated by all things self-driverless cars, just the whole idea of it and the technology behind it. So to be able to now talk about some of the issues and bring awareness to how we're trying to make the self-driverless car more accessible to people with disabilities is definitely a conversation I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, me too. I think driverless cars have a tremendous potential.
Yeah.
Well, I guess to be clear, we're talking about autonomous vehicles and transportation systems. That's our new center.
Right. Yes.
I'm not quite sure the driverless cars, although we've had some on the streets of Pittsburgh, are quite ready to be serving 100% of our on-demand transportation needs just yet.
Yeah, I agree. There are definitely some kinks that need to be worked out with regards to totally driverless, especially if there's not going to be an actual person anywhere in the car, just in case, for sure. So just to sort of give a little bit of background about yourself and who you are the director and founder of Human Engineering Research Laboratories. Can you just talk a little bit about the mission of the company as well as some of the accomplishments that you guys have done so far?
Sure. So the Human Engineering Research Laboratories is actually a center that is a joint effort of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and the University of Pittsburgh. So we're actually not a separate company. We are a national laboratories, probably one of the smaller national laboratories, as registered by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. I founded HERL almost 27 years ago now, January of 1994, and with just myself and two graduate students. And now we are located in the Bakeway Square complex in Pittsburgh with about 70 people working here. And I say currently working here is some people are working on site, some people are working remotely, and some people are doing a combination of both under the current circumstances.
Sure.
Our focus is on technologies that don't exist, or at the very least, are emerging technologies, so that we can make sure, so the technologies that don't exist, we work to develop them, and we have a pretty significant intellectual property portfolio, much of that licensed to small companies or even some larger companies, so that our people with disabilities, our Americans with disabilities and veterans can have a better, healthier, and better quality of life and greater participation than they might otherwise have if those technologies didn't exist. And in some case, we partnered on emerging technologies like autonomous vehicles.
Well, and just to sort of discuss a little bit and talk about the level of inclusion. I mean, I know one of the things I saw on the website was that the center was an integral part of creating the wheelchair that was, I mean, I don't want to say waterproof, but it could go through water, you know, and without it affecting the functionality of the wheelchair itself. I think you partnered up with Morgan's, or the CEO of Morgan's World, or at least, you know, there was a video showing the children who were able to use the wheelchair and still enjoy the theme park, the water park rather, which is really impressive. But I think you used some level of compressed air, if I remember correctly, as opposed to a battery for the wheelchair. Is that right?
Yeah, that's an excellent example. We call that the new chair and the new scooter. So we worked with Gordon Hartman and Morgan's Inspiration Island and Morgan's Wonderland down in San Antonio, Texas, to help develop a wheelchair that is waterproof and actually can literally run underwater. When we were doing the testing, we took it to Sandcastle in Pittsburgh and literally drove it in the wave pool. And people were all the way up to their neck in water with the wheelchair completely submerged.
Wow.
It doesn't use any electronics, and so it can be completely submerged. We worked on that project with Morgan's Wonderland, Morgan's Inspiration Island, and actually helped them design some of the aspects of Morgan's Inspiration Island to be accessible to wheelchair users. And so that the kids and parents could loan these wheelchairs. There's actually a little wheelchair concierge there that we also helped design with the park, that where they can, for free, borrow one of these chairs and then go play on splash pads. And there's a big pirate ship where they can squirt water cannons. And there's a little like a stream, like a artificial stream where they can play in the water. So it had to be completely waterproof. We also worked with Giant Eagle locally to develop a scooter that's also pneumatically powered. So it's a much more green technology. And we tested that at the Giant Eagle on the south side, and we're expanding that testing some other Giant Eagle stores here shortly, now that things have opened up just a little bit more in response to COVID-19. So that was pretty exciting, and that product is coming to market. One of my former students, Brendan Davler, who is actually shown in those videos, has now graduated. He's now Dr. Davler, and he's created a company called Atomize. And Atomize is licensed the couple of patents we have related to that technology, and is bringing it to market. So that's a great example of a need, an identified need that we worked on, created prototypes, developed intellectual property, and licensed that intellectual property to create a small startup company. And it's impacted, and our, partners like Giant Eagle, partners like Morgan's Inspiration Island, Morgan's Wonderland, as well as now a company, Atomize.
Yeah, definitely. And just for viewers that don't know, Morgan's Wonderland is the world's first totally accessible water park that, yes, is down in San Antonio, Texas. Now, you are the lead researcher for a study that's being conducted at Pitt. Pitt was chosen as one of the universities to study how autonomous vehicles can help people with disabilities. And there are a couple of different projects specifically that you're going to be looking to work on within your study. What projects will you be including within this study?
We have essentially 4 projects in the study. The first project is a comprehensive literature review, systematic literature review that is going to look both at the let's go look at the engineering, the scientific, and what we call the gray literature, so more public literature that is not necessarily peer reviewed, to get an idea of what is the current landscape and what's needed. So we want to look at what people are predicting as well as what people have done and where we currently are, and to get a better feeling about accessibility. Second project is actually to now survey individuals, what we call voice of the consumer, voice of the provider surveys. Those surveys will, voice of the consumers are people that will be potential users of autonomous vehicles and transportation systems. So older adults, people with disabilities, parents, caregivers, those sort of things. And then the voice of the provider is actually when we'd be serving like the manufacturers, developers, vehicle modifications, sort of cities, transportation system, private transportation systems, to get an idea of what they think are what's feasible and what's the timeline and what are some of the, we want to look for basically with both populations, both for barriers and facilitators.
Okay.
And then lastly, we're going to take the data that we gathered from the literature review, from the surveys, focus groups, and mobility mapping, and we're going to do a market analysis. So basically, how do you how would you classify people? Like, these people are likely to be early adopters, these people need these type of accommodations, so that we can, so people can know where to target resources. Like if you want to get a power wheelchair in a vehicle, you have to have this kind of space. You have to be able to have a person be able to tie it, talk. Maybe you have a person or a person who's visually impaired. How are they going to actually find the vehicle, right?
Right.
And safely get in it and things like that. So a little bit of that's kind of a combination of solid modeling, storyboarding, but to give designers a little bit of a leg up on how to move forward with actually designing the vehicles.
Sure. I mean, when I think about it, I think aesthetically, it could be like the wave of the future and the car of the future. If you think about someone in a wheelchair, for instance, who will need a ramp to get in, or possibly need a ramp, right? Because the car can only be but so low onto the ground. And so then what is that going to look like with the ramp coming in or coming out on its own? And, even for people with a visual impairment or maybe totally blind, what aesthetically or from a technological standpoint, the level of advancement in technology that a car would have come to be able to allow someone with a visual impairment to still be able to drive for one, because of that integrated technology in the system. I mean, it's really, I think we always kind of colloquially say George Jetson type stuff, but in a lot of ways it kind of feels like that, because you don't know what it's going to look like. And certainly 10 years ago, you would have never thought that there would even be a conversation surrounding all of this. So I think it's really fascinating stuff to see what the possibilities are, quite frankly.
No, I agree. It is pretty exciting. So, we are partnered, for example, with Toyota and Toyota Mobility Foundation and Merlin Mobility, which Merlin is a new startup company to help look at accessible and autonomous vehicles as well, out of the Los Angeles area. And the exciting thing is that they're thinking about these things as well, right? As well as so is Braun Mobility, which is the largest aftermarket modifier of vehicles now. So, you know, if you buy a car now and you take it, a lot of people take it to them and get it modified for their van modified so they can use it or something like that. But you brought up some really great points. You know, how are you going to get in the vehicle? How are you going to get your wheelchair tied down? How are you going to tell it where you want to go? What are you going to do if you want to change? If you change your mind sort of mid-trip?
Yeah.
What happens if there's an accident?
Right.
What are you going to ride by yourself, or can you know, are other people going to ride with you? Are those people going to know you? And how are you going to do this? Or are you and I going to buy a car together, or is it going to be a ride-sharing service?
Right.
Am I going to buy so many hours of transportation?
Yeah.
And then you have to decide. You know, can be tremendously empowering. And then the other thing is, are we going to have? Are all vehicles going to be accessible?
Right.
You know, if you think about the bus approach, right? You know, almost all buses are now kneeling buses, right? They have some spot for individuals with disabilities, older adults sitting up front, and wheelchairs, a sitting area. They've looked at, you know, accommodating individuals who are visually impaired.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about autonomous, you know, people sort of think of the car, right? But maybe autonomous vehicles are buses. There's just no driver on the buses.
Oh, sure.
And they follow you know, a fixed route. The other thing is, don't think about full autonomy. Right now, so almost everybody that drives is using some sort of autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
Because ABS braking, right? Anti-skid or traction control.
Well, I just learned about this. I didn't realize until I was doing research in preparation for this interview that, yeah, there are different levels, I guess levels 1 through 5, and 5 is fully autonomous. But yeah, many of the vehicles that we drive around today have some level of autonomy. It's just not a level 5 where it's a fully self-autonomous vehicle.
Right, and I wanted to bring that up because even with the lower levels of autonomy, like levels 2 and 3, have a tremendous benefit.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people don't realize this, but adaptive driving instructors, you know, that often what they, you know, a significant portion of what they do is actually take people's driver's licenses away.
Mm.
Because because of aging or an accident, illness, have acquired some kind of disability, and therefore they can no longer drive safely. But with lower levels of autonomy, they can, right?
Right.
Anybody that's got a driver's license and had to go through the dreaded driver's safety examination to get your driver's license, right? The on-road test. Typically fears parallel parking, right? But it's still pretty amazing how many people will, you know, drive around the block several times to avoid parallel parking. And you know, now that can be.
Used to live in this. Oh, sorry. I just have a quick. I know someone who lived in the city, and she was married, and she said every time she would go home, she would go find a parking spot she wanted, call her husband, and have him come down and parallel park for her, because she was just so terrified of, you know, being out there forever, people honking the horn because it's taking her too long to get it right. So, yeah, it's so funny.
Well, that's a whole Pittsburgh thing, right? There's even a video on that where people put chairs out to save parking spaces. So.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not only so it's enough that there's even you know, it's a tradition in some ways in Pittsburgh. So so those sorts of things, you know, that even those technologies have had and will probably continue to have a tremendous for people. You just think about levers of autonomy where maybe you're a little sleep, like truck drivers or somebody who drives a lot, or you get a little sleepy on the road, right?
Right.
And keeps you from hurting yourself or hurting somebody else. I mean, those are all important levels of autonomy that we want can have tremendous benefit for people with disabilities and older adults as well.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I want to get to a couple of concerns that I know some people from the disability community have raised, and just get your thoughts on them as to, how big of a concern and how you've maybe, whether you've given some thought as to how to address it when it comes to these autonomous vehicles. So rain and snow was brought up. Do you have any thoughts on how the cars will be able to navigate the weather when it comes to rain and snow?
So I actually think so. I think that in the future, potentially, autonomous vehicles will be better drivers in the rain and snow than humans are. I mean, I think so. You have to think over so one, not all drivers today are good in the rain and snow. And then not all vehicles are all well maintained either.
Right.
So that's things that we have potentials to improve upon in the autonomy, right? Dealing with rain and snow, and also making sure vehicles are better maintained, especially if they're like fleet vehicles or something like that, rather than individually owned vehicles. I actually I spoke at the Smithsonian a few years ago, and the VP for research at Ford and we were on a panel together. He said that probably we'll see there'll be an inflection point in the use of autonomous vehicles when insurance companies make the determination that they're safer than people driving.
Yeah.
And then what they'll do is they'll basically, the insurance companies will start to push people off the road for autonomous vehicles. The other thing is autonomous vehicles, if they're done well, they will, if it's not safe to drive, they won't drive.
Oh, is that currently within the model itself now, or that's where the research is going to make that as a part of the model?
So actually, so I've ridden in an autonomous vehicle. So in the current state, right, with the way they currently are, the funny thing about it is, for about the first 30 seconds to a minute, it's pretty terrifying, right? Because you realize that there's nobody driving this car. After that, it's terribly boring.
Oh.
Because they are like they're probably the most conservative, safest drivers on the road.
Not a lot of speeding going on, so don't be in a hurry anywhere. You need to make sure you leave the house in a timely fashion.
Right, they don't speed. They don't speed up at yellow lights, right? They they put their turn signals on every time. Maybe reduce the road rage then. That could be a side effect, less road rage. There's no road rage in an autonomous vehicle, right? Unless I guess you get AI and it develops road rage. But right now, there's no road rage. So, and they're also all very rule-based, right? It's not, so if you think about it, get more. I'm surprised, I don't know if you got the question, one of the big challenges I see is well, first, when you get drivers off the road, right? So I already know from talking to some of the people I know in the field that have actually, been deployed to autonomous vehicles, is that real drivers human drivers are a bit of a challenge for them. As a matter of fact, can take advantage of them, right? Because if you've got somebody that follows the rules 100% of the time, and you know that, you can kind of do things to you know, you pass unsafely on the right or whatever. And so the human driver, well, like you said, they follow the speed limit. So if you don't follow, if you're a person who likes to say, oh, I drive 15 miles over the speed limit, you're going to constantly pass the autonomous vehicles. So at least in the current circumstances. But the other one is making sure that they recognize, that autonomous vehicles recognize that a person who's blind or an older adult or a wheelchair user when crossing the street or whatever is different. Those are some of, I think, are challenges. I think some of the benefits, though, are let's say if all the vehicles were autonomous, there's some studies already shown that you could like platoon. So you could drive from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. probably considerably faster.
Sure. Oh, and then there was a question about battery life. Are the cars going to be sort of similar to the electric cars where there's a battery life and then we're going to see plug-in stations along the side of the road similar to the electric cars?
I would think so. I think as we move forward that there seems to be autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles kind of seem to be going hand in hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's considerably easier or considerably more feasible to make an autonomous electric vehicle.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Than it is to make a gas powered. And then plus, and for just from a market perspective, there's growth in both areas, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it seems like if you made a gas power, then there would be additional factors to consider, right? Of pulling into the gas station and who's going to pump the gas and all of that stuff.
Right. Yeah. The other thing about is electric vehicles, if they were, there's no human, you'd charge them differently.
Okay.
Right. You could deductively charge them and things like that. So you could, well, for that matter, for longer trips, you could, if there were more and more electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, you could start redesigning roadways to charge the vehicle as you drove in some ways, right?
Well, I was just thinking, what about some sort of a combination of solar power and electric power?
I think that's possible. I mean, obviously, there's been solar powered vehicle challenges.
Mm-hmm.
The cars are made to be very light, but they've got sort of remarkable performances, and there's huge investment in development of solar energy. And I think there's no reason that that's not going to change for vehicles as well, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's onboard solar panels or solar charging stations or something like that. I think that's all part of the future of a green economy.
Yeah.
But I mean, nobody has a crystal ball. Mine's pretty milky. So, but I do think that a lot of this in the future is that most of us probably are not going to own a fully autonomous vehicle. We're going to purchase so many hours per month, and then you can. It'll be more like a mobile phone plan, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dr. Cooper, this conversation was fascinating. I didn't even get to all of my questions, and I really could have continued on and on and on. I had a couple of things, but we've run out of time. I do appreciate your time, though, and we'll certainly have to do this again because I'm interested in knowing where the study is going to go, what you find out, and what you learn. So thank you for coming on the show and indulging me in my fascination with autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, and everything that you're doing at the University of Pittsburgh.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I appreciate it. And I'm happy to come back when we have more to share.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.